Welcome to AMS on the Air. I'm Dakota Smith.
I'm Jeff Rosenfeld.
And I am Irene Sands. We're here to podcast all things weather, water, and climate.
You can't hope something bad isn't going to happen. You have to be prepared. To be prepared, you need a plan. And if you have a plan, then you need to have the expertise brought to bear on that plan that exists across all of these different societies. When you have an entity, a sports league that is so steeped in tradition, sometimes it's very tough to change it.
Welcome to episode 9 of AMS on the Air. This week, we're featuring an interview from Dr. Kevin Kloesel, the director of Oklahoma Climatological Survey. He's a professor at Oklahoma University in the College of Atmospheric Science, and he has a tremendous passion for event safety when it comes to weather. I talked to him at AMS 2019 just from his Twitter feed. If you ever watch him on Twitter, he is always talking about event safety for when it comes to weather, particularly baseball games. I don't know if you guys have seen any of his tweets, but there are a lot of hairy situations that baseball teams, football teams get into, and he loves to talk about it, particularly when it comes to lightning and severe storms.
I think every season there's that one team, that one game that just didn't call it right, and just nothing bad necessarily happens, or it's something very close to something bad happening, but there's a story every season. I don't want to say with every sport every season, but every season there's something. I remember a couple of years ago, the Marlins in South Florida, they had just inaugurated their new baseball field. It has a roof, and it was the beginning of the season, and they were trying to be all, I guess funny about it. And it's the first game of the season. The weather's nice, and we're gonna leave the roof open. And then all of a sudden, it started raining. If you have ever been to the Marlins Park, not a lot of people go. So when people go, you're going to leave the roof open and have rain pass by. In a brand new stadium, that's probably not the best call. Especially what the excuse that the executives put afterwards was that they were looking at the app and the clouds were moving in the other direction. So it was like a double whammy of like, don't. And I mean, it wasn't serious. It wasn't like a thunderstorm with lightning, but it's still, you want to make the fans comfortable and keep them safe. That's a number one priority. But
I seem to remember hearing something about, at the University of Oklahoma, they've got over 100 days a year of severe weather potential or threats or something for the campus. Some very large number of days. And Kevin's right in the middle of that because he's the meteorologist for the university, basically, making those forecasts and working within the emergency management department there. So it's as if he's got a double hat there. He's a meteorologist, he works with the researchers and has the whole climate angle, but then at the same time, he's attached to the emergency management office. So he's like an emergency manager himself, and he can see that both sides of the equation, how difficult it is to communicate these kinds of threats to people who have to make difficult decisions or plan for these incredible events. I mean, think about it, tens of thousands of people outside with nowhere to go or very few shelter opportunities.
And get them to move in the right direction at the same time, fast.
He said something about how I think during the summer they have like 40,000 students on campus, and they're almost all in outdoor activities. They're not regular students with rooms to go to and awareness of the buildings. They're in camps and other programs. That's a lot of people outside.
When it comes to when you have like a lot of students or groups of people in a place and the decision comes down to should we cancel that event, usually the answer is yes if it's a particularly bad situation. But a lot of times in southern areas, when it comes to like the Southeast, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, school districts usually close, but the question is, are they safer in their houses? Because mobile homes and the manufactured houses aren't necessarily safer than a school. That's a sort of a different topic, but related to having that many students or campers in one area. So yeah, let's listen to my interview with Dr. Kevin Kloesel at the American Meteorological Society annual meeting in 2019 in Phoenix.
I think where this starts is with a recognition that we've been divided. And what I mean by that is that the meteorology community has all this amazing stuff, right, that could be brought to bear on this issue. And we have conferences. We have this amazing American Meteorological Society conference. Well, they do too, right? Stadium Managers Association, Event Safety Alliance, National Center for Spectator Sports Safety and Security. They have conferences. And they're talking about, okay, well, we need XYZ. We've not really ever integrated those two. We're starting to. So we're at the infancy of integrating the professional societies across the board, the people who need weather information and the people who have weather information. And it starts with a plan, right? We see so many places where somebody says, well, this could happen, but we hope it doesn't, right? Hope is not a plan. And that has been our theme throughout, that you can't hope something bad isn't going to happen. You have to be prepared. To be prepared, you need a plan. And if you have a plan, then you need to have the expertise brought to bear on that plan that exists across all of these different societies. So to bring together into the same room AMS, Event Safety Alliance, NCS4, Stadium Managers Association, it's really the first time that all of those professional societies were in the same room talking about this issue. So I'm hoping that the baby steps that we've been able to take leading up to this point will now be, walking, running, sprinting, going forward, and we can have better plans at venues worldwide.
Yeah. So different professional sports are sort of at different points in this process. In particular, baseball is probably not doing as great of a job as they could be. One thing, why are the umpires making that decision?
Oh my gosh, you should have been in our session.
I'm opening a can of worms.
No, it's not a can of worms. This was one of the reasons why we had MLB on our panel, and I did that to him, right? And I think one of the tweets that came out was a student as, oh, this is getting good.
Yeah.
And she showed a picture of the board, and what I had done is instead of just having a panel discuss and questions, if we had a lull in the questions, I had an inject. And so the inject was this montage of all of these lightning scenes at Major League Baseball stadiums with the rule, right? Yeah. 403E, that umpires are in control. Wow. And the first reaction from our St. Louis Cardinals guy was, God, Kevin, I wish you wouldn't have done that, right? And I said, Joe, why does this keep happening, right? That was my question.
Yeah.
And so we had this great discussion about where Major League Baseball is that is different than all of the other professional sports, but at the same time, the progress that's being made. So again, for them, it's also baby steps. It's a realization that they have to do things differently, and that when you have an entity, a sports league that is so steeped in tradition, sometimes it's very tough to change it, stop on a dime, reverse course. Mm-hmm. But they're working, and we had a great 2-hour discussion even before the 2-hour panel, just amongst the panelists. So one of the goals here was not just to show this panel to the membership, but we also had a meeting, right? So there was a productive meeting amongst these entities that occurred here in Phoenix associated with this panel, where we mapped out collaborations and things we could do. And now we have Major League Baseball, I think, on board to begin that process of changing their rules. It's the first time I've been optimistic about this.
Well, because I always thought it was going to take something to happen for something
I agree
bad to
with
happen.
you. Completely agree with you. Yeah. But if you look, that's how the rest of us have responded, right? Mm-hmm. This event, venue industry, sporting industry typically waits until something bad happens before it acts. And part of that is just naivete, right? They're not aware that these bad things can happen. And if you've never had something bad happen to you, you're less likely to internalize that. Right. We see that in Oklahoma in tornadoes, right? If somebody's house has been wiped away by a tornado, chances are they have a shelter now. If you haven't, you may not have a shelter, right?
Yeah.
Because you've never internalized the danger. And I think, again, the meeting that we had with these entities here in Phoenix associated with this forum, offline, right? We were here in Phoenix, but we're all in the same place. We're going to have a panel, but let's just not come to the panel and leave. Let's make this productive. Let's meet for several hours. Let's map out some strategies.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that.
That's wonderful. Is there a model that exists right now? Because I know NFL has a decent plan.
Yeah, one of the things about models, and this came up in the panel discussion, and you mentioned it early in our conversation, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And this was especially a discussion point given that this panel occurred within the lightning sessions, that we tend to one size fits all everything, right? Everything has to be an 8-mile radius. That's the NCAA rule right now. Well, as our West Virginia ops person pointed out, that can't be, right? Every stadium is different. Every shelter location is different. Every time that it takes to get to shelter is different. A day game is different than a night game in terms of the types of activities that some of our fans participate in, right, leading up to the game,
Yeah.
And which makes them either more likely or less likely to take shelter. So with these issues, you have to have a flexible set of radius, which means you need customized plans for everybody.
Yeah.
Now, we're at the point where we're finally getting everybody to adopt a plan, but what we're finding in many cases is that the one-size-fits-all doesn't work. And now we need to work and drill in deeper with individual entities, individual sports leagues, individual venues, right? All the way down to the venue level so that each venue has a customized plan that works for them.
Sounds like it's just a lot of collaboration and a lot of work. That's
And
gonna
I
have to
love
go
it,
through. Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
fact that we have so much work to do is a great thing because there's more collaborations to be had. I'm hopeful that there will be more sessions like this at AMS. I will be participating in the NCS4 conferences in February. So we're cross-pollinating. So just like we had their folks at our panel, I will be serving on their panel. So we're now getting that integration, right? That's going to result hopefully in synergy, and hopefully synergy results in safety.
So the National Weather Service has sort of stepped up with their decision support services, and I guess where is their role compared to like private sector? I don't know. I know they do big events, like parades and stuff like that.
And this is somewhat of a sticky wicket, right? Because we still have, this, and I'll be honest here, sometimes contentious relationship between governmental forecast entities, the National Weather Service, and the private sector, and whose turf, right, this is. And I say turf because I believe sometimes there are turf wars here.
Yeah.
There is a directive. The National Weather Service has a directive that specifies what they can and cannot do in this space. And what they can do in this space is work directly with emergency management, the public safety officials that work these events. But they can't work directly with the private entities that may hold these events. And so we still have some work to do there with, I'm of the opinion that if they have weather support and they have professional weather support, I don't care who it is, right? That's a great thing. And so I think there's still some things to work out on our end from a professional society and, sort of the way in which we go about this as to who does it, right? I think there's plenty of work to go around, right? There is, like you mentioned, right? If we're going to get down and drill down to the venue level, it's going to take all of us, right? It's going to take all of us. There's not going to be a space where one group can say, wow, that is all ours. That's just not realistic. So the fact that the Weather Service is stepping in with large events like Lollapalooza and some of those is, Rocklahoma, on and on.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I mean, just recently the Taylorville tornado, that was a big thing. They
Yes.
canceled the parade
Yes,
there.
correct.
And that could have been, it was terrible as it was, but just I
Absolutely.
can't imagine what would have
Absolutely.
happened.
So I think there's enough in this space for everybody. In fact, I think it's more than enough, right? I think even the expertise that we have is probably not sufficient to do it in a short period of time, right? It's going to take time.
Gotcha. What was something that surprised you from your panel?
I think the surprise was to watch our society of weather weenies identify themselves not as weather nerds and meteorologists, but as the fan, right? The people who go to events. We had a student from Penn State who got up and asked a question. He was passionate about the fact that he felt like the Penn State game at Michigan State, that the outcome was determined by how the weather situation was handled. Our West Virginia ops panelist said, we had a discussion that if the cancellation of this game happens, will it cost our quarterback the Heisman Trophy because he has one less game? So all of these external things, right? And we say this a lot, that weather is never the sole determining factor in any of these venue decisions, and it's not, right? There's this myriad of other social factors, behavioral factors, gamesmanship factors, athletic outcomes that also ride on this. And it didn't come up, but when you think about what goes on not too far up the road from here in southern Nevada, that the amount of money that is typically one way or the other on these athletic events at these venues, and weather becomes a big deal, right? It's why our friends up in southern Nevada are posting weather information associated with the other information that they provide about games. It's monetary.
Yeah.
So it's not just the public safety per se, it's all of these other, and I think that played out right in our panel, and I think that came as a surprise to everybody. It was like, wow,
Yeah.
Didn't realize there were so many factors involved, weather just one piece of that larger portfolio of decisions that have to be made. So
how important of a role does individual responsibility come into this? Because I know this. To me, it's like, well, places have to have a plan, but people also have to, take care of themselves and the people around them.
We had approximately a 15-minute discussion on that very thing, because it came up, what does the liability piece on the back of the ticket mean? Whose responsibility is it? Who's liable? Is it the fan? Is it the venue? Is it the franchise? What is it? And I am so thankful that we had Steve Edelman on our panel, because he could answer all of those questions, right? He is the preeminent venue events lawyer. He's been the content expert for the Indiana State Fair stage collapse. He's the content expert for Live Nation. All of these folks. He's been on ESPN Outside the Lines, so he's gotten to talk with Bob Lee, and on and on and on. And he laid out in very simple terms for our meteorologists in the room who don't have the legal expertise, the fact that this is what they look for, right? They look for people who will behave reasonably under similar circumstances, but who also have a duty of care, right? And that is everyone's responsibility, not just the venue, right? It's the fans' responsibility to behave in a reasonable manner as well. And so if you decide to sit in your seat in row 3, exposed, and there's lightning, and there's message boards all over the place that say evacuate the bowl, the stadium bowl, then you are not behaving reasonably in this situation. And therefore the liability does not exist with the venue, right? They've done what is in their duty of care to advise you of the risk. And without sending law enforcement to actually grab you and drag you away, you have to behave reasonably and have a responsibility yourself. That was also an interesting discussion that took place in that session.
Yeah. So I live in Colorado, and I've sort of gotten to know the lay of the land when it comes to events and how they deal with weather. And it's very different. I've been to a Broncos game where they've canceled or they've delayed it, and they handled it amazingly. Rockies, not so great. I mean, still okay, but it's still not where it should be. But I think the hardest part, and this is applicable across the country, are places that there isn't that obvious shelter area.
Right.
Red Rocks is one of them. And I actually talked to I think I ended up talking to their PR people, and they really didn't have a good answer for me, because basically what happens is they'll get a storm that'll come in, and they have a private sector company, I think, that helps them. but they don't have a place for everyone to go. There's thousands of people up there, and they tell everyone to go back to their car. By the time people are back to their car, it's like a mile walk to get to your car. The storm's over. So what happens to the places that don't? I guess, do they have to build something for people to go?
Right. So this challenge of exposed venues is a huge problem, and we had a PGA Tour forecaster specifically for that reason, right?
Yeah.
Because you have this huge expanse of grass and no place to put people. And he pointed out that when you look at the aerial shots at a golf course, if you ever see vans parked along either fairways or behind greens, little white vans, then you know they're potentially expecting weather, because it's always save the talent, right? And it's like that way as a concert, right, too. Save the talent first, right?
Yeah.
Those are for the players. If there's a lightning alert, that they can go directly and be in those vans, and they're parked right there. They do the same thing for whoever's at Red Rocks, right? Whoever the performing artist is will have a shelter-in-place strategy, solution, whatever you want to call it, there. Now, what do you do about the patrons? This is a problem with venues. Venues in many instances feel like if they get you out of the gates of their venue, that they have done everything possible within their duty of care. In Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma has come in and put in statute that if you are on, for example, a university of higher education, a higher education campus in Oklahoma, it doesn't matter where you are, right? You are the responsibility of the university, whether you are a student, faculty, staff, or visitor, guest, spectator, whatever. Which means that for our stadium at OU, we can't just say, get out of the stadium. Ooh, we're done, right? They're gone. No, because we've taken them from a location on our campus and put them on a new location on our campus, which means we still have to find shelter for them. For these venues that are exposed, what you mentioned is probably true. Looking going forward at what you build close by that could serve as shelter. Daytona did this, right? Daytona 500, the Daytona International Speedway, after 2014, when they were threatened by a tornado and realized, I have no place to put people, went through a multi-year construction process, which now allows for the ability of fans at the Daytona International Speedway to seek shelter. Concourses, hardened places, new restaurants, on and on and on. Now, was it cheap? No, right? Daytona's got the money to do that. Many thousands of venues, amphitheaters, golf courses, swimming pools, camps, Boy Scout camps, you name it, don't have the money to do this. The Boy Scouts are struggling with this right now, right? They've had multiple weather fatalities at Boy Scout campgrounds, but the purpose of a Boy Scout campground is to go out there in the woods in the tent, right? Yeah. And that's not a good solution for severe weather. So for those, you have to be far more proactive. If you're more proactive in time, that leads to more uncertainty. It leads to more false alarms. It leads to more misses. And now you have to weigh that against your activity. And that's hard, right? I don't have an answer for that. Yeah. You almost have to get into the cost-loss modeling business to try and solve that problem as to what's best for both the venue and the spectator or the patron. And that's a hard problem. That's something we still have a lot of work to do on going forward.
Yeah, I was sort of hoping that at some point Red Rocks or these venues would think about what it would cost if something did happen and they didn't have a plan, and right. Some of the legal ramifications.
Well, and we've got answers to that, right? There are legal precedents out there that are, individual wrongful death suits, can be settled in the $5 to $10 million range. Right. So if you think I can't spend $1 million or $500,000 to build this, potentially safe space for my patrons, but you weigh that against two people being killed in a lightning strike, and suddenly you're out $20 million. And it's like, again, we tend to be a reactive society, not a proactive one. And I don't want to point fingers, right? But there are instances all over this country, all over the world, where it was a fatality or a very close near miss that led to the motivation to do it right. And had it not been for those things, we'd still be in the same boat at those venues.
Why do you think why do you think that panel happened? Was it just because there was motivation from the weather people to?
Yeah, I think you can look at individual passion there. I think that there are a select group of people And it was the group of people that worked on the venue statement for AMS, which is now approved by council and online. That is a great resource with examples of things bad that have happened, but things good that have happened, right? So there's it's not just a doom and gloom story. That statement is here's what went wrong, but here's what went right, and at the places where it went right, this is what they had in place. So this is how we can improve going forward. I think there's a group, again, that passionate sports nut group within the society, which has very much taken on this, this effort going forward. And it's important, again, to get those other folks here. Yeah. I was thrilled, right? I mean, this is a first for AMS to have all of these other professional societies represented on the same panel, all working toward that same goal.
So I'm curious, as someone who's super passionate about this, have you ever found yourself in a sticky situation with outdoor being at a venue?
Right? Yeah. Always. That's what I do. One of the things about the University of Oklahoma, I'm blessed, right? I am blessed with a university that has leadership across its administration and across its athletics that takes weather seriously. But at the same time, it's hard not to when you're in Norman, Oklahoma, right? I mean, you look at any map and we're a bullseye of something. Yeah. And but our administration, for example, spent $19 million on tornado shelters for campus, hardened shelters where we can put people.
Wow.
We had new stadium construction that resulted in hardened areas where we could put large numbers of people. We have an athletics staff that is willing to listen to the meteorologist and alter practice schedules, games, right? We have kicked off in the last several years at two completely different times because we didn't even want to get into the risk, right? So where the risk window was right smack in the middle of the game, and our athletics folks were visionary enough to heed the information and move the entire game window out of the risk area so we don't put ourselves in a situation of having to evacuate. What that led to is that instead of doing 6 or 7 events on campus a year, it's then 15, it's 20, it's 80, it's 150. We now do almost 300 events on our campus every year that we provide weather support for. And I think that's the greatest thing ever, right? The fact that our campus takes the Storm Ready University program seriously and then takes it the next step, right? Which is, let's not just access information. Let's put the meteorologist in the decision-making process for these events to make the best decision we can possibly make for the safety of our, again, by statute, students, staff, faculty, and guests that are on our campus. So yes, lots of situations, and it's not the ones you might think, right? I mean, there's a song, right? It's Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, right? Wind, right? Wind is huge, and it's not just tornadic. We have decided that in central Oklahoma that pyro is a wonderful thing, right? We have pyro at football games. We have pyro at our women's softball games, at our baseball games. Every time somebody hits a home run or a Friday night after the game, it's everybody bring your blankets, we're going to have a fireworks show. Okay, well, it could be the best day ever, right? Clear skies, sunny, we get into the evening, and gosh, that south wind, that low-level jet picks up, and now we're blowing 35 out of the south, and we got a fireworks show. Okay, now what, right? So working with even to that level of detail of how to have a pyrotechnics show safely, we are doing on our campus. Where we need to push next from the weather side is that this was especially apparent in the lightning conference. The tools, the techniques, the expertise in lightning is immense in our research sector of the society. We now, those of us passionate about this intersection between weather and venues and sports and entertainment and on, need to be able to go in and pluck the right things and the right tools and go through the conversion process, the interpretation process, the translation process for our non-Met venue operators. And that's the one thing we probably didn't hit on because we just didn't have enough time. Education, training, outreach, those pieces of this problem are still out there, right? You can't just take the high-tech stuff and drop it into the lap of the venue manager and say, here, this is great, use it. Right? Doesn't work that way. We have to figure out a way to go through that conversion, immersion, translation, again, education, training, outreach, That was something that we didn't really discuss at the panel. It just didn't come up. We were already running late anyway, right? I mean, just so many questions and so much great information. There just wasn't enough time. So I'm hopeful that maybe in future AMS conferences that we can bring some of the same sectors of these different professional societies together again, and maybe more customize it to provide more direct information of what's available and how to use it. I think that's kind of the next step.
Well, yeah, let's keep that momentum going. I'm excited to see what happens next year in Boston. Hopefully we have something similar.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So after this great interview, thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our listening feed wherever it is that you listen to this podcast. As soon as we release a new episode, you'll get a notification and you can listen pretty much wherever you go, on the go.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Are you there? Well, if you are, so are we. So follow us at AMS on the Air. We'll post every episode and post other little tidbits that you don't necessarily see on the show.
Again, thanks for listening to AMS on the Air. Happy weather.